Well, to the war in the Middle East, and one of the main sticking points between Washington and Tehran as far as peace talks are concerned is Iran's nuclear program. Iran's president says the US had no justification to deprive Iran of its nuclear rights. Robert Kelley is a distinguished associate fellow at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute and a former IAEA inspector. He joins me now from Vienna. Robert, good to have you back on the program. Now, firstly, what can you tell us about what you know of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium, in particular the stockpile that is highly enriched well beyond what is required for energy production?
That's a good point you make. People are very focused on the highly enriched uranium, 440 kilograms of 60%, but there are also hundreds of kilograms of lower enriched material as well as natural material and depleted. All of those have their uses in the nuclear business. In this case, I think most of the focus is on the 440 kilograms and how we can get that out of the country. You have, I think, two options. One is to do a smash and grab, send in the special forces, and the other is to do it cooperatively. We have some precedent for cooperative, and it'll be interesting to see the smash and grab if they decide to go that way.
Now, if with this, the stockpile of the 60% enriched uranium, what does it tell us then about the Islamic Republic's nuclear ambitions, given that Tehran has always said that it's for peaceful purposes?
The 60% was a really unfortunate decision that someone made a few years ago. Iran was very upset with the West because they wanted sanctions relieved. And when they left, well, they were in the JCPOA and they were doing what they were supposed to do. And then the Americans left and Iran was getting no help. So they started enriching to 20%, which is a reasonable number in the civil world. But then they got madder and madder, and in a moment of defiance said, we'll go to 60%, which is short of a weapon. They were saying, we're not going to go to weapons grade, but we're going to let you know that you can't push us around. In retrospect, that was a really dumb thing to do because it got them so close to weapons grade that it was hard for them to back down.
Yes, and I do wonder, because we're getting really conflicting information out of Washington, because you have at one point the defense secretary saying that Iran's nuclear facilities had been obliterated from those strikes in Isfahan and Fordo last year, but then now you've got that, another round of threats and fears that, they could be enriching uranium to nuclear grade capacity. Does it sort of help with mixed messaging coming from Washington?
My sense of what happened back in June was that they were obliterated. The facilities you mentioned are definitely extremely badly damaged, if not completely wiped out. Fordo, we can't tell because it's so deep under a mountain. Isfahan, we can see a lot. And by the way, Isfahan was not really bombed in the sense of where that material is stored. So when Trump seems to think he can find nuclear dust underneath a deeply buried mountain, he's very confused. The Fordo site doesn't have the material. There are probably 2 canisters the size of a scuba tank down there and 22 somewhere else. And the somewhere else is where we need to be looking.
So when it comes to a deal that would satisfy Washington, do you get a sense Iran might be happy to oblige in terms of at least ending this crippling war?
They have a face-saving issue. They've invested a lot of money, a lot of time and enrichment in a nuclear program, so they'd like to leave the field with something to show. And don't forget, they have a very large power reactor at Bushehr and the second one under construction. Nobody's going to touch those because the Russians have a huge stake in those plants continuing to operate. There's money and a lot of prestige involved there as well. So the nuclear program won't end in the sense they're going to make electricity, but it'll be with the Russians.
So whatever happens, in the outcome of this war, would you assume that there would still be that deep distrust between Tehran and Washington?
Well, yes, I think that's very, very clear that every time Iran has done something that they felt was in compliance with their obligations with IAEA and JCPOA, they got nothing for it. And now they've been bombed twice in the middle of negotiations with the U.S. I don't see how you could trust the U.S. and somebody who's focused on nuclear dust for one moment. There is no nuclear dust. It's UF6.
And Robert, the last time we spoke, you were suggesting Iran could propose downblending back to 20%, ultimately on the way back to 3.5 enrichment of uranium. Do you think that's still an option?
It's an option politically. It's an option in terms of making sense. It may not be possible with so much that's been obliterated. They may not be able to find the plumbing and the valves and the tanks that would be required to do the job.
Yes.
My guess is that those things are all there. That there are parts of Natanz, for example, and remaining pieces of Isfahan that they would have the material to do it.
Okay, Robert Kelley, always great to get your insights there from Vienna. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Nice to be with you.